My Life Between Lives story from Newton Train Institute practitioners.
I see a whole change in the thrust of searching for answers about who we are and why we're here. And I think it's wonderful, and I just hope the movement continues to expand.
Let us expand the universal consciousness together with a My Life Between Lives story presented by the Michael Newton Institute.
Welcome to My LBL Story. My name is Ekomananda. Today we have special guest, Eric Christopher. Eric is a certified hypnotherapist. He holds a master's degree in marriage and family therapy. For over 24 years, he has been specializing in past life regression, life between life therapy, and present life deep emotional and subconscious healing. Eric's passion lies in guiding clients into the expanded states of consciousness to access their higher self and inner wisdom, helping them uncover and transform the root causes of limiting beliefs and fears. His work supports spiritual awakening, healing, and profound insight through the transformative power of spiritual hypnosis, often facilitating profound healing breakthroughs that seemed miraculous, leaving medical professionals in awe. His own path began in India at the age of 24, leading a journey that awakened a deep calling and ultimately led him to the transformative field of spiritual hypnotherapy. Today, from his private practice in St. Paul, Minnesota, Eric continues to guide individuals into life-changing insight, clarity, and healing, supporting a return to wholeness, purpose, and inner peace. A big, warm welcome to Eric.
Well, thank you so much for having me on your show.
Thank you for coming to the show.
It feels like we're kindred souls here. Well, I think everyone in the Life Between Life family is kindred souls. I want to thank you so much for having these interviews and for having your YouTube channel. It's just getting out in the mass consciousness stream with people like you doing this kind of work, putting it out there more and more. And so I thank you. And it's such an honor. I mean, you exude just love and light, and it's such an honor to be here with you. And I thank you for the work that you're doing.
The pleasure is equally mine, and we just different body doing the same thing, and we all emanate from the same source energy.
Yes, that's right. We all are different, unique expressions of the one consciousness.
It is our absolute pleasure to have you with us today. Thanks for coming. Perhaps my first question is, how did you begin your spiritual path?
I would say it was when I was born, because my father was a minister. So my soul chose my parents to come to. But that's really not where my spiritual path began. Because growing up in the Christian church, it was a very different view of spirituality. It was, I think in Western spirituality, it's common to think that you have a soul and the soul perhaps goes somewhere after you die. But I find it's much more accurate to say that we are these eternal soul beings having a human experience. And the idea of reincarnation growing up was not even on the radar for me. We didn't talk about that. We didn't even think about it. Although a premonition was, I remember one of our neighbors, Mr. Bardwaj, was from India. And I grew up in a small town. And I remember he and my dad having a discussion on my driveway about reincarnation, and Mr. Bardwaj insisting that there was reincarnation, and my dad saying, well, I guess we'll find out. now I have no doubt in my mind. I know that these days there's enough evidence of reincarnation that even a logical minded skeptic can believe in reincarnation just on the sheer evidence of it. And what I find that's so important is evidence of reincarnation is evidence that we are these eternal, magnificent soul beings that are outside of time and space, and we're using these bodies. And how my journey began, I would say my spiritual journey began when I could not find a teaching job after I graduated from college. So I went overseas to Taiwan to teach English. And it didn't really start there. It started soon after I left Taiwan teaching English. I decided to backpack around India for 6 months. When I did that, I went to at the time it was called Calcutta. Now it's Kolkata. But I decided to work for the Mother Teresa Home for the Destitute and Dying. And my first day there, I said, well, what should I do? And the man in charge said, well, go sit with this man over here. He's dying. And there was about 50 cots there, and maybe 30 of them were filled with people that were laying there. So I sat down next to a man who was dying, and I sat next to him, and he started talking to me. And I tried to tell him, I don't know what you're telling me, because he was talking in Bengali, a local dialect. And it didn't matter to him. He kept talking to me anyway, and he held out his arms, and I grabbed his arms, and he died right in my arms. Then he became this cold, hard thing. All the light, the energy, the consciousness just left his body. His body began to get very much more stiff. We took his body and we threw it on a burning pyre. And all I could kept thinking was, whatever I was just talking to was not this body that is burning here. I was talking to his consciousness, his light, his energy and consciousness. And wherever that is, that's who and what he was. Then that's who and what we are. And then I had this strange, interesting experience. Not too long after that, it lasted for about 24 hours. While I was traveling around India, I had this sensation that my eyes were windows, and I was just peering out the windows of my eyes. Nothing could ever harm me. Even if my body died, nothing could ever harm me. I was, who and what I was safe and secure watching through the windows of my eyes. I see, in retrospect, I was having an experience of connecting very deeply with my eternal soul self, more tuned into that part. But something kept turning in my mind. We are these spiritual beings. We are these spiritual beings having a human experience. And a few years after that, I'd say it was 7 years after that, I came across Michael Newton's book, Journey of Souls. And that changed everything for me. It was in 1997 when I picked up that book and started reading it. It's interesting how that came about, because I remember I was working part-time on a psychiatric unit. And I knew one of the nurses next door on the adjoining unit, on the next door unit. I knew he was very spiritual. I really became enamored with spirituality and learning all I could about it. I remember his name was Dale, and I remember when he's walking by the desk, I found myself blurting out. I never even had planned this at all. And I think it was almost as though my spirit guides were talking through me or prompting me to speak. And I found myself blurting out, Dale, what book should I read? And I don't even think he stopped to think about it. He just said Journey of Souls by Michael Newton, and almost as though he was channeling something. And so I quickly wrote that book down, and I got the book and I read it, and it changed my life. That was the book that really launched me into the spiritual path. When I was reading that, something in me said, I got to get training with this guy before he retires. And fortunately, I was able to do that, and finally in 2004. But it was just when I was starting to get into a marriage and family therapy program, University of Wisconsin Stout in Menominee, Wisconsin. And it was a master's program, so it was very intense. And I didn't have any time to pleasure read. And I had just read Journey of Souls, and I thought, geez. So even though I was studying marriage and family therapy, in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, gosh, I'd much rather do this past life regression, life between lives. This is what's really meaningful for me. And hey, what could be more powerful and sacred and holy than helping a person connect to their higher soul self? Of course, it was a very intense 2 years, but one of the professors there did past life regression himself, and he and I really connected and really bonded. And in fact, I ended up writing my master's thesis called Exploring the Effectiveness of Past Life Regression. And he showed me where to get training in past life regression. And at the time, there was this organization called IART, International Association for Regression Research and Therapies. A lot of the pioneers in past life regression in America and in Europe had kind of founded this organization back in the late 70s, early 80s, and 90s. And so when I joined that organization in 2000, that's when I started my past life regression training and completed that. And in 2004, was able to do some training with Michael Newton himself. He was there, and he was training some of the newer, some people that he was phasing out of it and was starting to retire. And so he was starting to train some of the early trainers in past life and life between lives work. That's how I initially started on my spiritual path. But I can tell you, Ekomananda, India, I mean, I was so enamored with India. I went back 3 different times, or three times altogether, and just travel around the country like a feather in the wind. And I visited a lot of ashrams, and I had all kinds of mystical experiences. I think the first time I went to India in 1990, that's when I learned about meditation. And so I really got into meditation and did a few Vipassana meditation courses. I had never meditated 5 minutes before I never meditated a minute before in my whole life, when I decided to do this 10-day silent retreat where we were meditating 10 hours a day and for 10 days. And it was almost like trial by learning to swim by being thrown into the deep end. But that had a profound impact on me, being able to go within and tap into some powerful divine, the peace beyond all understanding within my own self. Second time I went to India, I learned all about yoga. I mean, by happenstance, I just picked a town by random, Pondicherry, and I thought, I'm going to take a train there. And I took a train there, and it came in at about like maybe 6:30 or 7 in the morning. And as soon as I got off the train, I could hear all of a band. It was like a parade going by and musical instruments. So I walk over to see what is all this music going on. And there was a band going down the street because it was a parade, and was kicking off the first ever international yoga conference, and for 4 days. And so I had just landed there, the forces combined to have me land there just as this yoga festival was kicking off. So for there, that's how I learned about yoga, and I got into yoga the second time I was in India. The third time I did a lot of ashram hopping and had some mystical experiences. So India has been a very special place for me. It always feels like a home to me every time I go there. And I have had a past life when I did a past life regression once in India. That's a long-winded story of how I got into spirituality.
Well, it's wonderful. Always, I feel the joy when I'm listening to a friend, a peer practitioner share their journey. And India is,
Mhm.
it just feels like a motherland. And I am going there in September, my first time. So that's going to be
Okay.
a very exciting journey. I've heard many stories about India, all kinds,
Mhm.
you name it, being
Yeah.
totally thrown out, um, shake off.
Yes.
Happening, all sort of things that I'm so excited about
Mhm.
my trip.
I can say the first time I went to India, I wasn't looking for spiritual experiences. I had gone from teaching English in Taiwan, I went to Nepal. But when I was in Nepal hiking in the Himalayas, I would hear people, travelers, I would meet up with other travelers who had been to India, and everyone was full of India stories. And some of these stories were so absurd and funny and silly. And they would say, you see the most strange things in India. And all the stories reminded me of like my favorite show growing up was called Monty Python's Flying Circus, and it was this British humor show, but it was just absurd humor, and and all the stories they're talking about reminded me of that. So it made me feel like I want to go and experience this country. And little did I know that it turned out, yes, it did feel like Monty Python, some of these different things that you would see, but what I wasn't prepared for was how it really opened me up spiritually and helped open up my consciousness. I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't looking for that, but India has a way of doing that. So I envy you going there. I'd love to go there again, and I will someday. But I you'll have a great experience there. Yeah, given your spirituality, be ready for some mystical experiences there in India.
I am sure it's going to open me up a little bit even more expanded to a higher consciousness. You visited many ashrams in your third visit. Is there any particular experience in a particular ashram that you have?
Well, I visited many there. When I first, what I can say is I was drawn to go to Bodh Gaya, and Bodh Gaya is where it's famous for the Buddha was sat under the tree there and got enlightenment under the tree. A descendant of that same tree is still there in that same spot because before the tree dies, they'll take a graft of it and bring it grow another tree. So it's essentially like the same tree, a descendant of the same tree that the Buddha sat under. And I remember going to Bodh Gaya, and it was in the early spring. It was in March, and there's Buddhist temples all over that town. But I sat under that tree, thinking, well, I thought in my mind, well, wouldn't it be nice to have a leaf from this same tree that the Buddha sat under that get enlightenment? But of course, it was the springtime. There's no leaves on the ground, and the branches were way too high. Couldn't jump up and get pick a leaf. So, and the leaves were out, but there was no leaves on the ground. But I remember thinking, I just was meditating with my palms up, and I just thought, well, I'll just ask the tree for a leaf. And I asked the tree for a leaf, and I was meditating there and after about 20 minutes, I felt a little something in my hand, and I looked down, and there's a leaf from the tree. And my first thought, of course, was someone put that there. And I look around, and there was no one there at all. And it just dropped in. And so I just thanked the tree. Uh, some of the other ashrams, are you familiar with the book Autobiography of a Yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda? I read that book, and I became very active for 10 years in the Self-Realization Fellowship. That he came to America and founded a lot of meditation centers here. And in in the city that I live in, uh, there's a meditation center there. So I was quite active for 10 years. But I went to some of his ashrams. There in India, it's called the YSS, Yagoda Satsanga Society. But there was three main ashrams in the north of India. that I went to and visited. Beautiful flowers. But I think one of my favorite ashrams was it was Ramana Maharshi's ashram in Tiruvannamalai.
That's where
And
I'm
there's,
going.
oh, of course. Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah. Early in the morning at sunrise, I before the sun rose, and I think this is a pilgrimage that some people do. I climbed up the mountain of Mount Aranchala to the very top, and and just as the sun was rising, I could see the sun coming up, and there's like about 3 or 4 monkeys all around me, and I got out some oranges, and I was eating the oranges, and there was the monkeys wanting some food from me, so I shared my oranges with the monkeys up the top. And on top, at least when I was there, and this was would have been 18 years ago, there's a sadhu up there living there, and he would make chai for some of the people that would make the pilgrimage on top of Mount Aranchala there. I'm happy for you. That should be a wonderful experience.
Yes, we can't
Yeah.
wait. We're gonna
How
go.
long are you going to be there, Ekomananda?
I'll be there for 3 months.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm.
Oh, all over or just at the just only at the ashram in Tiruvannamalai?
I haven't decided yet. My spiritual teacher, Shunyata, we now work together. He says, you just go to Chimanai first and then decide.
Okay.
If Ram
Okay.
grab you, you don't have to make any plan. I might just stay there for 3 months. I'm thinking at the moment, perhaps Raman Ashram for a month, then gradually move up to
Hmm.
check out some of the other ashrams in also one of the visits.
Hmm.
And then the Mayama's ashram up north
Yes.
nearby Rishikesh.
Oh, yes, yes. By Rishikesh, yes.
Mm.
That was highlighted in Yogananda's book, I believe, in Autobiography of a Yogi. There's a one in Kerala that I visited. I thought she's the hugging saint. I forget what her name is now. Do you
Amma.
know? She's a
Amma.
Amma.
Yes.
Yes, we stayed there. I stayed there for a while at Amma's. And there's another one called Ananda Shram, which was near a little bit north of Amma's ashram, Ananda Shram, and that was Papa Ram Das was it was I know there's different Ram Das's, but this was Papa Ram Das, and he founded that one. Also went to Buddha Party, which was Sai Baba's ashram too. There's some good ones all over.
I guess the main purpose is for me to see actually how an ashram operates, because I've got this vision to build an ashram in Australia. So that's the first pilgrim.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Oh, you're going to be building an ashram in Australia. Oh, that will be wonderful.
That's the idea that came to me the first year actually. Right after
Beautiful.
I received my first message, I received my first awakening message in 2020 in COVID. When I was doing
Okay.
my first yoga teacher training, the voice
Really?
coming through is that you're going to be a healer, a spiritual healer. I was
Mm.
shocked. I
You-
was kind of like thrown away. What does this all mean? I was not
mm,
spiritual at all. I was absorbed in this physical third dimension and chased
mm-hmm.
my
Uh-huh.
relationship didn't go anywhere. So when I got that message, it took me some time to really figure out what this was. And then the year after, so September I got my first call, first message, and then November I got my second message. Then I jumped into it, I began to embrace this calling. So the second year, I believe right after I started to set up my website. So it went on, all happened quite quickly when I embraced the calling. So I saw a vision. I got this idea, as we know, that's spiritual guidance. Saw the vision that we're going to build an ashram. I was thinking, what? how I'm going to do that? That's like a lot of things happening in a short amount of time. I was um I was not sure what's going to happen. I just set on it. I said, okay, let's see what happens. And I was like really new to healing industry. I'm like a newbie to this whole world, and I'm just starting to get my first client. And you gave me this vision. So anyway, long story short, I just kept that vision in my head. I'm like thinking, well, I'm sure you're gonna show me what to do. So, step by step, then my spiritual teacher appeared. If I may call that, he's my master, but we work very closely these days. He arrived in October 2023. So he's one of the devotees to Ramana Ashram, but he has other masters as well. So he's heavily influenced by different masters from India. It's all rooted in India and as sacred as we can ever say, ever know. So it's kind of slowly coming up now. We are having our communities. We do our monthly gathering. It's sort of get these energies moving, and it happens quite fast. But I thought before we actually setting up this name, this organization, this foundation, Indian trip is a must to initiate, to get this energy, to really feel the master's energy. I mean, Arunachala is here, is in your heart, is within you, but having that trip is, I guess, is symbolic.
Mm-hmm. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Maybe one day I'll visit your ashram. Is it going to be in Australia?
Yes.
Okay.
We are in South Australia. So we have Vipassana happening all around in Australia. We also have ISKCON Village that's in Northeast Australia in Queensland. Here
Okay.
we have some sort of a spiritual center, some sort of a Thai monastery, but we don't have a proper ashram, so to speak, in Australia.
Okay. All right. Does your teacher, does he follow Ramana Maharshi's kind of a spiritual tradition?
You can say that, but also no. I guess the essence of core sharing is non-duality.
Non-dual. He's a non-dual teacher.
Non-dual.
That's what I moved from. That's why for 10 years I was very involved with self-realization fellowship, but I started to move away from that, and all I thirsted for was non-dual books by people that had spiritually awakening experiences, and to read from them. And that was in 2000. That started in 2007. So after that, that's all I've ever wanted to read is for spirituality, was these books by people that have had that were coming more from the non-dual perspective, that have had spiritually awakening experiences. And I feel myself bit by bit by bit. Some people have like a spiritual awakening experience that is just, all at once. And that would be a little, I don't know, it would be kind of hard. But for me, it's just been little bit baby steps, bit by bit by bit by bit for probably the last 18 years. I think, and when I first started to get more into the non-dual teaching, it was when I was in India the third time there. So it has a way of opening you up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In the clinical or therapeutic space, we see a lot of people experiencing this spiritual disorientation.
Yeah.
As you said, that this once-off opening. This once-off opening can throw people away.
Yeah. I have been having more and more clients, though they may come for a past life regression, but then as they come for the past life regression, their consciousness, when that life is over, they'll move higher into the soul realm, and now they'll just keep going higher and higher and higher, and they'll move into a space in which they'll describe it as interconnected with everyone and in everything. There's just kind of melting into this unity consciousness. And I so many of my clients will be doing that these days. And so much more so than I found, say, 10 years ago. I think that's reflection of the consciousness of the planet raising a bit by bit.
It's a wonderful work that we're doing. So how do you incorporate the past life, life between life into family and marriage healing?
Guess what? I don't really. Get these days when people say they would like marriage and they would like marriage or therapy, or I always refer them out to someone else because I only specialize now in using spiritual hypnotherapy, whether we're doing present life emotional healing, traumas, inner childhood traumas, or past life regression or life between lives work. That's mainly all I'm doing now. So I always refer out marriage and family therapy to other people that's more their specialty. I've been doing past life regression now for 23 years. And although I got my master's in marriage and family therapy, people still call up and want to know, or they look at my website, and I don't say anything about marriage and family therapy on my website, but somehow they still find me through Google, marriage and family therapy, and I don't even do that anymore. It's been a long time, so yeah, I don't really integrate it, but mainly past life regression, life between lives, and present life healing. When I do present life healing, I do a guided journey up into what I call the light of source energy, and have my clients, melt into that light of source energy before being above a timeline of their present life. And then it's as though they're tuning into this higher dimension of themselves. And then there, it's like this higher part of them can help do some healing or releasing work, or reprogramming the subconscious mind on that body and mind part of themselves down below on their timeline. So all my work these days is involving some type of spiritual hypnotherapy.
Would you say that the reason you opt to specializing in past life regression or life between life therapy because the results are much more profound than the conventional method?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. I can, oh, it's just one spiritual hypnotherapy session can be worth 100 regular talk level therapy sessions. You just get things at a higher dimension, where we are multidimensional beings. Once in a while I'll do talk level therapy, but I call it spiritual psychotherapy because I want to do it with the background truth that we are these eternal soul beings having a human experience. That I always tell people, there's one thing you cannot escape from, and that is the fact that you are an eternal, indestructible, magnificent soul being that's outside of time and space. You're indestructible, you're eternal, and you're whole and complete. And you could not even separate yourself from this part of you if you tried. It just gets covered up in the human experience, of course, but that's your base. And guess what? You're based in love, and you come from love. You'll go back to love. You are a being of love while you're here, but it just gets covered up in the human experience. And so I like to say healing is like a subtraction process. It's you already are whole and complete as this brilliant soul being, but it's, hey, whatever's covering that up from traumas or limiting beliefs, we can see through, or we can do some healing and releasing with that, or integration with that. But your base is this whole and complete, beautiful being. And so even when I'm doing regular traditional therapy, I always like to come at it from that spiritual vantage point. And so I just don't think I can work any other way. The truth sets people free, it really does. Especially when they can experience that for themselves, not just intellectually, but that's the beauty of life between lives work. And, past life regression and life between lives, they're really merging they're really merging together, because so many people, they'll do the past life regression, get to the end of that life, and their consciousness just moves up to this higher vibration, and often becomes like a mini life between life session. but to be able to viscerally feel that sense of unity consciousness, to feel the deep love from your soul guide, to feel your eternalness, that just has a triple. I think I've had a lot of clients say a lot of subtle fears melt away after doing a past life regression, or where their soul is in the soul realm. And it makes sense to me, because you start really tuning into that part of yourself that has no fears. I mean, it makes sense that the body's going to have fears, because the body gets sick, the body dies. You need money to survive. But the soul doesn't get sick. It doesn't die. It doesn't need money. It doesn't have fears. It doesn't have these little worries. And that's who and what we are. What it often does is, just by feeling that experientially, it just has a way of calming down a lot of subtle fears, especially fears of death. I've had a lot of clients that had fears of death over the years. One past life regression as a way of totally melting that all away, as well as a lot of other subtle little anxieties. They just kind of fall away if they tune into this higher dimension of themselves.
Isn't that a major thing, fear of death, that so many people being haunted by the idea that I'm going to die and I'm going to lose everything, I'm going to leave my life behind? It's just so frightening.
I know. I remember I had my 4th level trainer in past life regression was this mystic guy. He could see spirits all over. And I remember him one day telling us in the classroom, he said, for most people, death will be the single most joyous moment of your whole life. And when you do past life regression, even if they die in a traumatic way, it's like, oh, it's instant relief when they're out of that body. And then even more relief as they can float up a little bit to a higher dimension.
I think it's samadhi. It's you're going to samadhi.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
It's beautiful work that we do. It's I can't think of doing anything else. I don't think I'd be good at much anything else. I have a brother that's a fruit farmer. I have another brother that's really good with technology and rose up the corporate ladder, and another sister that's a lawyer. And it's just like the way my brain works, I wouldn't be good at any of that stuff. And I don't have any interest in that either. But this is the one thing that it's like when I read that book, Michael Newton's Journey of Souls, that something clicked in me that said, this is what I want to do. And up until then, I was in my late 20s before I knew what I wanted before I read that. And it's like I knew that this is the work I wanted to do. Up until then, I was kind of struggling. What should I do with my life? I knew more what I didn't want rather than what I wanted, but that made all the difference. So thank you, Michael Newton, for paving the way.
We're so fortunate to be here, that many masters, teachers, guides already done the hard work. And now for us, it's kind of like picking the fruit. It's pretty easy to land on.
Yeah, it sure is. It is. Yeah.
From your clinical experience, how do you actually explain to your clients the difference between life therapy versus past life regression? What happens clinically is some clients receive a past life regression session, then they're done. They feel like, I've got what I need, it's perfectly good, because they don't know the key difference, or how life between life therapy can take them beyond the physical realm another level.
Well, how I explain it is rather simple. I say, because when I do past life regression, I basically say, when we do past life regression, 75% of the session is going to be in that past life, and maybe 20 to 25% of the session will be when that life is over and we move a little ways in the spirit realm, then we'll reflect on that life and see how it relates to this life. And maybe we'll see another life. But life between lives, I say it's just flip-flop. Maybe 25% of the session will go to a past life, and then 75% of the session, though, we're in the spiritual realm. We just move up a little bit. We'll move up higher and higher into the spiritual realm. Another way of saying moving up higher into the spiritual realm, you could say another way of saying that is your brainwave states get slower and slower. You're moving from alpha, theta, slower brainwave states of theta, and maybe even delta brainwave states. Another way of saying that is you get more and more anchored in the present moment. And there's different ways of saying, or another way of saying it, you as an energy being, your vibration raises higher and higher as we get deeper into the spiritual realm. All these different things are happening. And so when you get a sense of, and as you get higher into that soul realm, people get a sense of connecting with spirit guides and loved ones on the other side. One of my favorite questions I like to ask, I'll sometimes ask my clients, I'll say, ask your spirit guides if they can take you somewhere fun or helpful or beneficial, somewhere into the spirit realm. And more often than not, they move to another higher level of vibration in the soul realm. And it's like the higher they go, the more of a sense of just connection, interconnection, peace, love that they feel. That's when they can get all kinds of questions answered. Once they're in that higher vibration state, it's just moving into a higher vibration. Yeah, the life between lives is just it's much deeper. That's what I tell them. And you're spending much more of the time in the spirit realm rather than in the past lives.
So more absorption would happen, more issues would be healed, and that is beyond the intellectual level of understanding.
Well, so often people will come with a whole list of questions. And once they get in that higher vantage point of the soul, sometimes they'll find that their questions, they'll say, I'll say, well, this is what, so-and-so has asked for a question. And then from the soul's point of view, they might say something like, oh, that's not really relevant anymore. Because they just are seeing things from this expanded view of the soul, this eternalness of you that you are. And that just sees things differently than the human body and mind personality many times.
So what might happen in the initial session and later on as the clients expand a little more, higher wisdom coming through may negate or reject what the clients initially actually downloaded. Is that what you're saying?
Oh, what I'm saying is the things that sometimes people might have a question when they come in. Oh, like sometimes they'll say, oh, what's my soul color? Or they want to know what that is. But then when they're in that higher vantage point, they'll say, oh, that's not relevant. There's no, I don't feel any hierarchy. There's no real hierarchy here. Or they might want to know about a past life can they know anything about a relationship? If they had a past life for a relationship with a friend or something. And sometimes in that soul realm, it just isn't very relevant. The healing that can occur sometimes in these life between life sessions or the past life regression sessions. For me, when I do past life regression, I take the client up to a little ways into the soul realm at least. And that's when, like I say, so much healing can happen. I had one guy who was a medical doctor, and he had a frozen left shoulder. He couldn't raise his arm, and he had been to so many doctors and clinics. He had been to the Mayo Clinic, which is very famous in Rochester, Minnesota, and that's only 45 minutes or an hour from here. But nothing worked. And he tried lots of alternative therapies. Nothing worked. I always like to joke, I'm often the person's last stop. He did a past life regression with me, and he saw himself. He went to a life where he was this really strong, buff Roman soldier. He carried a shield in his right hand. In his left hand, he was like a killing machine, and he was really good at what he did. I put out a lot of peasant uprisings and just conquered a lot of territory. But when that life was over, that was when he started feeling remorse over all of the fatherless homes he created and all of the killing that he had done. And then he started feeling guilty. And then he started thinking, boy, I wonder if that has something karmically to do with my left arm. And so I just had the eternal part of him. I said, now you're tuning into this eternal part of you. Why don't you call upon all of the souls that you ever harmed, all of the eternal, the eternal part of them, call upon them and just speak from your heart. And so he did, and he just apologized, and the answers that come back almost inevitably when you're apologizing from the soul realm is hey, it's okay. We are just all role playing down there as a human. All is forgiven. It's okay. And when he could feel that all is forgiven, at the end of the session, he was able to raise his arms straight up. When I saw him 3 years later at a talk by Dr. Larry Dawsey, who was doing a talk about these double-blind studies on the power of prayer, he was at that talk, and he went right up to me and he raised his left hand, and he said, Eric, that's the only thing that ever really worked. It has a way of, for some people, these past life regressions or life between life sessions can just be the perfect key for what they need. And oftentimes their own unconscious mind or their higher mind or higher guidance knows just what they need. And so that's why, hey, go within and you might find the perfect key to help heal something physically, mentally, or emotionally. I've had many, many dozens of those types of cases. And it's always so amazing and fascinating to me. But yet it makes sense to me logically.
We don't know what we don't know. We think we know about our physical condition and how we can fix the problem physically, but the insight and the wisdom that coming through a session, it's an enlightening experience, not to the clients, but also to ourselves as well.
I love the work that I do because it really, it cements into my whole subconscious mind that we are these eternal beings looking out through these eyes. We are eternal. I mean, and when I'm doing that day after day, helping people connect to their higher soul self, you start to view things from the vantage point of the soul so often during the day. Down the street, my neighbors had twins. And so my first thought is, oh, I wonder what kind of contract those two souls had that they wanted to be together, and how they knew each other in other lives. And so that's always where my mind goes.
Each relationship we have in this realm ties with how we actually plan this journey and decide where I'm going to land, which sort of family parents I'm going to choose. It's just fascinating and super healing by having to understand our past.
That's right. Ekomananda, I have to share a story with you, because remember in 1990, I had that's how I first got in. I felt I started having these spiritual, when that man died in my arms in India, 1990. 23 years later in 2013, I'm doing a past life regression with a woman. She was in her early 20s, and she went to a life of a Vietnam soldier, a U.S. Vietnam soldier. And he saw that he died in Vietnam as he was a prisoner of war, and he was missing in action. But when that soul raised up higher into the soul realm, she started to see all kinds of spirits coming to her, wanting to give her messages to loved ones in the physical realm. And all these other spirits were coming to her. And then she said something that made my jaw drop. She said, Eric, there's a man here. He's from India. He says you were with him when he died. He wants to thank you. And it's like, oh my God, how could she ever know that? There's no way she could ever know that. Um, but I just said thanks for stopping by. Tell him thanks for stopping by. But if I thought about it, I would have said, tell him thank you for really propelling me on this spiritual path that I'm on, that for helping kickstart my whole spiritual passion by having that experience.
I'm
It's
curious,
fascinating.
what is his spiritual relationship with you?
I wonder. I don't know. I wouldn't that be something? We'll reconnect in the soul realm, perhaps, and we can understand if we've. I was just with him the last few minutes of his life, but boy, he sure had an impact on me, and he stopped by and said thank you.
Like
23 years later.
like good friends to one another. He helps you to
Thanks.
propel the journey, and then
Yeah,
you hold his hand and help him passing peacefully. Like he's not
I
dying
hope
alone.
maybe in the soul realm we're good friends, and we're yeah, and we just crossed paths for just like half an hour.
So amazing. I mean, truly we experience there's no time and no space when we are
Yeah.
in the realm, when we hold space for our clients.
Yeah, deep, powerful work for people, and to help connect to the higher dimension of themselves. That more, what I like, or what Newton would say, the more permanent part of themselves. How powerful that can be.
I know, it's just incredible. Do you have any other magnificent healing stories you wish to share?
Mm. The one that sticks out is right now. There's a man who came from Green Bay, Wisconsin, which is a 5 hour drive from here. And he wanted to do a past life regression and after that, a life between life session. And I know that, you know, yeah, so many times it's recommended to do a past life regression before the life between life session. He came and I always have them when we do past life regression, I have my clients make a statement of intent for the inner journey. And if they can't think of a statement of intent, he said, well, I'm just curious, really. So I said, well, how about, ask your higher mind or higher guidance, show me a life for lives I've lived before that is, that's most impacting this life and is most helpful and beneficial for me to see. And he said, okay, that sounds good. So that was his statement of intent. And when he did a past life regression, he saw 2 lives, but the second life he saw was an idyllic life. He lived in like in a clan. It felt like about 300 or 400 years ago, somewhere in Europe, but the clan felt like an extended family. And he even said in the middle of it, he said, this is like an idyllic life because there's plenty of food, everything. But except the last 2 minutes of that life, it was sheer terror because his village was invaded. He woke up out of his shelter. There was screaming and chaos and bloodshed, and the last 2 minutes were just terror, shock, and he got a sword right in his heart, and that's how he died. When he was moving up higher into the soul realm, there was like a light bulb that went off in his head that said, oh, that must be related to why in my present life I've always had a chest pain here. After the session was over, he said he'd always had a chest pain that the doctors could never figure out. And it was more than just a phantom pain. It was also a feeling of fear and anxiety, like impending doom. And after the session, he had said he'd been on medications for this for 30 years. But during the session, though, once he said, "Oh, that might be impacting this life," then we just did a process where we imagined pulling out that sword, releasing all of the trauma from that life where it ended, replacing it with healing light. And when that session was over, he said, "This feeling is totally gone." And I told him he's going to come back a month later to do the life between life session. So I said, I'll bet you anything that when you come back in a month, it'll still be gone. So he did. And he did come back in a month and it was gone still. And then it was 6 weeks after the life between life session, he emailed me and said that he had weaned himself off of all of his medications that he had been on for 30 years for this chest pain and this feeling of anxiety here. And he's never felt better. So it was just something that, there's so many of those sessions out there, and I've done a lot of sessions where people have healed medical issues, dying in a car accident explains their strange chest pain that they had when they got crushed into the steering wheel. But once they see it, it's totally gone. Once they see it where it came from in the past life and energetically let it go. There's so many of those sessions out there. It's just fun to be able to make a profound life-changing impact in just one session. But it makes sense. Energy is, we're all beings of energy, and energy can get carried over physically, mentally, emotionally, sometimes and impact our present incarnation. And when you can see what got carried over and energetically let it go from this higher dimension of your being, voila, deep healing can happen, deep lasting healing. And that's so gratifying to do this type of work.
Absolutely. We are so blessed to be here and to carry on the legacy Michael Newton has established for us. Now, speaking of that, you trained with Michael Newton, is that right?
Yes. Yeah, he was there in flesh and blood. Yeah.
Tell us a little bit
what
more.
I can say, he was always such a humble person. And, when we do these trainings at that time, this was before online training, so everything was in person. And so it was during this 5-day training that, you just have dinners together and such. And I remember he and his wife sitting there. I'm thinking, Michael Newton, boy, I'm going to give him and his wife some privacy. But he's so humble, so friendly. I remember him saying, Eric, no, you come and sit with us. So I was able to sit and have dinner with Michael Newton and his wife and just in me. And he was asking all kinds of questions about me, always very interested. Both he and his wife were so friendly. The magnitude of his work, he was so humble. And I'll always remember what a kind, giving, loving heart he had. It was a delight. It was a delight to work with him. Now I guess at the time I didn't, I guess I took it for granted, Michael Newton here. But I guess now in retrospect, I feel very fortunate to have had some personal one-on-one contact with him.
It meant to happen as he is one of your mentors or guides, and now many, if not millions of individuals' life, and he can to work with us and bring the consciousness of wisdom through people's life, helping them to release the energy that does not serve them anymore.
That book, Journey of Souls, that's just gaining more and more awareness of that book. More and more people are coming to that book if they've lost a loved one, or it's just a step in helping open up their consciousness to see things from a higher vantage point. We are these souls having a human experience. I've had so many people that come across Journey of Souls after the death of a loved one, and that is what helps propel their spiritual journey. Eckhart Tolle often said we tend to grow the most as people and as souls on the heels of some tragedy or loss. For many people, that's what it takes to get them to start exploring the idea of, hey, are we these eternal, their eternalness or their own immortality? But Michael Newton's book does it in such a way that, and when they read that, so many people will say, he articulated things in such a way that made so much sense to me. You know, that makes so much more sense than what I was raised to think and believe.
Having to personally guided thousands of sessions throughout your professional journey, what does reincarnation actually mean to you, or what would you interpret reincarnation?
What reincarnation means to me, I've had clients research and verify some of their lives. That's always fascinating to them and me, but it doesn't surprise me. But for what reincarnation means to me is it's basically evidence of reincarnation is evidence that we are these eternal soul beings, that we eternal, we're indestructible, we're outside of time and space. We are whole and complete, you know. You can't take a gun and shoot a soul and kill it. It's pure energy. And guess what? You couldn't separate yourself from that if you tried. You are this eternal being. It's what's animating our body. When people begin to shift their identity to the higher dimension of their being, oh, so many fears can melt away. Adyashanti was an enlightened teacher, one of my favorites. He once said, all enlightenment is really just a radical shift in identity. People are identifying, it's when you identify with the same light, energy, and consciousness that animates everyone and everything, and a cat and a dog and a tree and a glass of water. You know, it's one consciousness looking through. I think as we spiritually grow and awaken, we begin to awaken to our own inner connection and our own eternalness and our own oneness beneath the surface, and how healing that will be for humanity. And the more people awaken to that, the better it is. I've had so many clients these days, like I mentioned earlier before, more and more clients I'm noticing are having that universal consciousness experience as they move higher into that soul realm, in the life between life sessions. So they get a visceral taste of it.
It's the unstoppable shift that is happening universally.
I agree. Yeah.
So wonderful to learn your journey and sharing your wisdom. Now, if you have a final piece of advice to our audience, what would that be?
A final advice: continue on this growth path. Everyone, I think every human being, not every soul, I should say, there comes a time when they begin to thirst for spiritual growth, to understand more of their spiritual nature. And boy, when you get that thirst, just keep going and keep learning and growing. And that's what we're here. One of my clients was speaking to their spirit guides one day, and their guide said something so profound, and it made so much sense. But they said, just as the body's instinct is to breathe, the soul's instinct is to grow and evolve. And that's what we're doing here. We're here to grow and evolve and awaken to who and what we truly are. Yeah. And we're all on this journey to become that which we already are, and to awaken to that. A wise person said that. I didn't come up with that, but it's true. So continue to grow and evolve.
So beautiful. Continue to grow and evolve. Apart from helping individual clients, do you do any training? Are you involving in any Michael Newton work?
I think what happened after working with Michael Newton, and then I felt like I was on an island for 20 years, and I missed the first conference that we had, but I'm so glad I went to the second conference. There was something in me that nudged to go to Barcelona, and I just knew I needed to do that. And then I connected with with Michael Newton, the spiritual hypnotherapy family. Peter Smith said, how can we get you more involved? And I'm not really good. I didn't want to be at all as part of when I was involved with IART, I was part of I was on the board of directors in their co-chair for the research department. I just didn't want to be on the, the politics behind it. I didn't want to be as, the leaders behind the organization or anything. I just wanted to practice myself. But he said, why don't you think about being a coach or a lab coach? And so I talked to Ricardo about it. And so I've been doing lab coaching now. And this is my first year of doing lab coaching. So I just started that, really. And it was only like a week or a couple of weeks ago that we got introduced to the person that I'm coaching. So now I'm involved with that more.
You have such depth and rich, profound experience in regression and life between life therapy. That's going to be a huge bonus to the newly trained therapists, guiding them to find clarity, to learn your technique that the people don't have, and even just share your energy with them is going to be so helpful.
I just have to get up to speed with a little bit more what they're teaching now, which I'm learning. In fact, they sent me the manual of what they're learning now, and I'm kind of catching up to that and, learning. But yeah, I after doing this for 20 some years, I know what works for me, and little tips here and there I can share. And it's such a joy to be able to do that. But for me, also learning from others, I've learned so much from others as well in this last year or two. So it's such a great opportunity to share with one another. It's it's a family, There's a Life Between Lives spiritual hypnotherapy family.
Absolutely. I often feel that it's not just healing and guiding others, and it's also a very humbling experience, because it really teaches us that we know nothing. You feel that next clients will bring you something totally fresh, totally new about disease and ailments, and it just continuously shaking us off the ego state and continuously rising and expanding in the universal consciousness.
Yeah. I guess that's a good way of saying what LBL does, Life Between Lives work, is it really helps you rise above that ego state and feel a separation, a visceral, an experiential separation from that ego state.
Yeah, I normally just explain to clients that the issues that you're experiencing, the opinions, perceptions that you carry on will be absorbed if you expand to the LBL state. And each session is actually going to be different. And so it's really, however you're ready, you're going to receive what you need.
That's right. You don't have to. Sometimes clients will come to me and they'll have all these issues. Oh, my mom died. I remember one woman coming to me, and she was 60 years old and her mother had died. And she just said, I just need to know if my mother really loved me. And it's like, I know there's nothing I'm going to say that's going to convince her of anything, but you do a past life regression and go into the soul realm. She got all the convincing she needed. She went to this higher vibration and she could understand. Oh, because she ended up seeing a life where she was in England and she had many children, but one child she is so bonded with who died early. And then she was so heartbroken that she couldn't be present with the rest of her children. And when that life was over, her soul went up high and reunited with her daughter, who she was pining over. And then she realized, oh my goodness, I really wasn't present with my children in the way they needed me to be. And then a light bulb went off and said, my mother was going through so much trauma. She couldn't be present with me growing up in the way I needed. It didn't feel like, I didn't think she ever loved me, but now I know she loves me. And she even emailed me after the session saying how transformative that was. Now she knows that her mother loves me. So it's just an example. You don't have to know You don't have to know how you're going to help this person, but as you go within, her own higher mind or higher guidance will show her something that is going to help be exactly what she needs to move to the next level or to get whatever healing she needs. And it's like it's tailor made from her own higher soul self or her own higher guidance.
That story you just shared is a fantastic example of the most common issue that we experience struggling from a relationship, abandonment, being abused.
Yeah.
Why do we have this relationship? Why have such a horrible mother? This
Mm-hmm.
LBL exploration truly help people in a way that are beyond the human mind's comprehension.
Yeah, they can get a sense as to why they even chose. What were they trying to accomplish as a soul by picking their mother or father in this life? And what were they trying to accomplish? And once they see it from that higher vantage point, ah, a lot of their own traumas can melt away.
It's just so wonderful, so satisfying experience for us being in the position, holding space for others.
Yeah, it really is. It's just deep, holy, sacred work. It's a privilege to do this kind of work. And it's a privilege to talk with you and to be able to share more. And I'm certainly have such gratitude for you to have your YouTube station where more and more people can understand and learn about this really profound, sacred, healing inner journey work.
Thank you so much for coming to our show. It sheds more light to our audience. And what you just said reminds me about one thing came through this year. We are one, not just we're one of another. So we cannot go ascend to the infinite home without leaving others on earth. That's one
Mm-hmm.
level of explanation. Another level is we're part of one another. It's not just we are individual bodies, we belong to one source, but also we are part of one another. I'm part of you, you're part of me. And this
Mm,
LBL takes you to experience this oneness.
yeah, it does. Yeah. We're part of one another to have that experience. That's well put. That's very beautifully well put.
And
Thank you so much.
thank you so much for your stories, for your
Mm,
enlightenment journey, for how you have helped so many confronted souls who are, struggling. You guide them into healing and profound inner peace. Thank you.
thank you, Ekomananda. Thank you for doing what you're doing. I appreciate that. Maybe I'll see you at the next conference that they have, whenever that is. It might be not this year, but next year or something.
I'm sure God has
Okay. Or if I find myself in Australia, I will go to your
come
ashram.
stay with us.
Thank you for interviewing me and thank you for having me on your show. It was such an honor. And it's so good to meet you. You're so heart centered and you're so wise. And it's just a pleasure and honor to just be in your presence.
Very kind. We're learning from one another.
Yeah, we are. We are. Well, many blessings. Namaste
Namaste.
and have a,
Way
have
to
a, have a wonderful evening.
To the audience, thank you for watching. Stay in tune and see you in the next video.